Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Doug, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. Our best bets coming up later in the hour. The champs will be playing. The banner will be going up in Florida. Panthers, Bruins, the rings. They were handed out recently. They look great. You know, they're
they did.
Massive and obnoxious like every other team that wins. But I thought it looks pretty cool, man, to have the Panther in there and – you know, everyone's got their names on it. It's really cool stuff.
Looked awesome.
Yeah.
Now, did I read, and maybe this is just fake news, did I read that there's a chance that Swayman is sniffling around to, play tonight? Did I read that?
I have not seen that. If you read it, you got to find where you read that.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to. But I thought it was questionable. I'm like, he just joined it.
Why would usual, they do that? People love the – yeah. People love the first on the ice for the Red Wings is so-and-so, Patrick.
Yeah.
They also first goalie to leave the ice is Korpisalo. He's your starter tonight.
Yeah. Well, there you go. He should be the starter. Swayman just signed.
You'd be a moron to put him in net tonight if something goes wrong and he blows out his hamstring or something. I think that would be an incredibly stupid move.
Well, what's the point of the whole song? I guess it was a negotiation thing. I get it. But why announce that Korpisalo's your guy? And he's starting opening night, and you're using the player.
They did the whole game, Hayes. They brought in that Patera guy. They said Korpisalo's our starter. And then Korpisalo went to Quebec City without his gear, and they crapped their pants.
Sure.
That's what happened.
Yeah, I get it. But still, it's like you're using a player in your team as a prop. You know,
pretty much.
Korpisalo, you're just a prop. We'll let you know when you're going in to make sure Swayman signs. And I guess Montgomery said it's a possibility, but I find that highly unlikely. I think that'd be silly. Let him ease into it. Let him. I don't know when he would return. I don't know what their schedule is. Boston obviously plays tonight. I don't know when they play next.
Right.
But at some point he's got to get in. He's going to get in the first few games. You got to play him. Now you've paid him. He's a young guy. He's an integral part of your team. Swayman's got to go.
Yeah.
Right. He's got to play, and there's not much you can do. He's a goalie. You can't hide the guy. You can't sneak him in on shifts and just let him get his feet wet. The guy's got to play, and he's got to make stops immediately.
I mean, he might be – I swear to God, after watching that face-off prime thing, he might be the type of guy who just walks in and goes, I'm playing. I want to play. That guy has this, incredible amount of confidence. He's not shy of the moment.
Okay, go ahead and play then. Just don't get hurt.
That'd be a cool story, man. It would be a cool story if he played.
Well, the thing is it sounds like he's been skating.
Oh, I hope so.
Well,
no, but what I'm saying is he hasn't just opened his gear. He didn't open his gear yesterday when he signed or 2 days ago when he signed. He's been skating for a while, I think, with Boston College or Boston University. One of them. Never got into – but it's not like – a lot of players got into a lot of preseason games. What did Nylander play? Did he play 4 periods?
Yeah, I guess Joseph Wall played
Matthews,
4.5.
Wall played 4.5. How many did McDavid? I think McDavid and Draisaitl played a couple games. I'm trying to look at guys around the league.
But they were in camp and organized scrimmage and stuff like that. This guy hasn't been facing NHL.
I wouldn't start him, personally. I wouldn't start him. I would go with Korpisalo. Let him get some practices under his belt. I'm just telling you, from what I saw of that kid in that face-off show, I wouldn't put it past me if he walked in there and said,
If there's any chance that guy goes in the net tonight, I'm sure they'd check every box. You've skated for 3 weeks every day straight. There's going to be no risk. I don't know. It seems crazy, but sometimes you just got to say, let it fly. If you want to go in there, go ahead and do it, man.
That'd be cool. It'd be a cool story. And, again, tough spot to play. Night one, you're in Florida. It'll be a packed house, banners going up.
Well,
it's an emotional time in Florida right now,
I was just going to say,
coming in.
I talked to a buddy down there, they're on the coast side, they're evacuating. On that side, it's rain and I can't imagine. You want the building to be packed, but there was talk that maybe this game would be moved or postponed a little bit just based on what's going on with Hurricane Milton. It's called Milton.
Milton,
right?
yeah, and it's supposed to hit. I think tomorrow night is when it's supposed to make landfall, and it's on the Gulf Coast, and I think it's going through anywhere between Fort Myers and Tampa. which it will undoubtedly put the Lightning in a bad spot. The Buccaneers.
Well, their rink could be all messed up too, right?
Yes,
like, you
for
imagine
sure.
if the Tampa's rink gets
well, this
jammed up?
storm is looking like it's a monster, and it went from like a tropical storm to a Category 5 in 48 hours or something.
Yeah.
And now they're saying maybe it'll weaken by the time it gets to land. Who knows?
I would hope so.
When you see when people in Florida are freaking out, it's serious business.
Yes,
because they deal with hurricanes, all the time. Like, unfortunately, it's just kind of a routine part of life down there. And when they start hyping up like this one could be a bit of a different beast, that's when it could be serious trouble.
It's real. It's real for sure.
So we got a game currently underway. Seattle's up 2-1. The old 1:00 start on a Tuesday in Seattle. So I'm assuming that building's packed, but who knows? And then we got the Champs playing tonight. Then Chicago's in Utah, and we're joined now by former NHLer, NHL on TNT analyst. We see him and hear from him all the time. There he is, Darren Pang. What's happening, Panger?
Not too much there, fellas. How's everybody doing today? God, you guys are looking good. What a start to the season. Man, oh, man.
We feel good, man. We feel good. And it's great to see you. And we were just talking about Swayman, like how crazy it would be if he actually played tonight. We don't think it's the best idea, but it would be a cool story. I mean, as a goalie yourself, how would you feel about that?
Let me see. If Mike Keenan was coaching me, it would be definitely a no, you're not playing. I would. I guess it all depends on what exactly he's been doing. He sure grabbed his hockey bag out of his car and raced into the locker room with a big jump, and I'm sure it's exciting for him. I mean, the best thing that could happen is they're excited for him. He's excited to get in there. They work their tails off for him to make sure that he's not under too much stress, and they end up coming out with a win, and everybody looks great. The worst thing that could happen, he gets in there and he goes east to west, and he hasn't seen the screens or the one-timers or the pace of even practices. I won't say preseason games because, honest to goodness, I watch too many preseason games, and I think they're, by and large,
awful.
Mostly a waste of time and awful. It's been painful to watch a lot of the games. There's been maybe a couple of games that have been good, but that's really about it. So anyway, maybe the Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa series. Maybe they had the most juice in it of all the games I saw. But a worst case scenario is he moves quickly, he flinches, he twitches, something happens, and bang, you got yourself a groin injury right off the hop, and that would be terrible news.
Yeah, I hope they wade him into it a little bit, give him a few games or at least a week's worth of practice before he gets into it. But we had a spirited debate last hour about Shesterkin's situation, and me being the goalie hugger, I'm fighting for every inch. O doesn't like the fact that $88 million, which is fair, and it's a great point. He's turning down $88 million. It's being reported anyways.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on Shesterkin and, where the goaltenders are now creeping up or at least looking for, even pay with some of the big boys in the league?
I think sometimes it's very much warranted. Noodles, I mean, the most important position, the reason why you're going to get to the Stanley Cup final in most cases, maybe Vegas makes an argument a couple of years ago that that's not the case. I look at the best goalie in the league's Andrei Vasilevsky. For me, Noodles, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but you got one goalie to pick, I'm picking him. I mean, I can't imagine another goaltender intimidates shooters much like Vasilevsky does. And even last year when he was injured, he comes back and he still has 30 wins. So, I guess, it's New York City. Is he the face of the franchise? Yeah, he sure is. Gets a lot of notoriety. Maybe New York goalies get more notoriety than other goaltenders just because it is the most famous arena and it is the New York Rangers. And I think for him it's warranted. I think he's a top 3 goalie in the league. I'd be careful myself about not putting too much of a bullseye on myself, but more what are we going to do down the line? What players will we not be able to get if I make that much money? What percentage of the cap is that going to be? If you end up signing that deal and you end up losing 2 very valuable players, or even maybe a really good defending defenseman, and you can't afford to get another one of those guys back, and now you're the goaltender that's in a situation on the ice where now you're exposed a little bit, and now all of a sudden your numbers creep down or up, if you want to, down on the save percentage, up on the goals against average, and now the pressure's on you. I'd be careful as to what I'm doing for myself and for my team as well, and make sure that I just don't put it all on me. There's got to be a number that makes everybody happy, and again, that's been reported. Don't know how entirely accurate it is. I'm sure it's got some some credence to it. So that'd be my feeling. Is he a top goalie? Yes. Seems like it's a number that's an awful lot of money right now. I think that 8 times 8, 64, 8 times 9, that's a decent enough money. I'd want to surround my team with a lot of good players instead of just me on an island.
Panger, you're with the Blackhawks and do their games. What do you think some reasonable expectations for Bedard are this year? I think we discussed him earlier in the show too, where he's going to kind of navigate the waters and determine what kind of superstar he's going to be in the next couple of years, whether he's going to be mega elite with the McDavids and Draisaitl's or just like a goal-scoring type star player. What are your expectations of him this year? Yeah,
I think last year, O-Dog just, as an 18-year-old coming in, really did represent the league quite well, up until that
Certainly
injury.
Did,
Man, you like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm 18, I'm putting on the gear for the first time, I'm walking from the locker room to the rink, and then I'm going to do one interview nationally that was on ESPN. That game was in Pittsburgh. Then I'm going to do another one between periods, and let's throw another one on there, right after. That was right off the hop. The next game was a TNT game. Bang. Interview to begin it, interview on the ice. Like the kid, that part of it was amazing to me in what he did and how he handled those things. Now, all that being said, I thought last year, I'm not saying teams tiptoed around him a little bit. They often do around number 1 overall picks. They're not going to drive through him right away. And even the Brendan Smith hit was a clean hit. There was nothing wrong with it. He lost possession. He leaned forward. He got popped in the jaw. Ends up, missing 14 games. I think this year, he's going to be more engaged. I saw that in the game in Milwaukee. We broadcast that on Chicago Sports Network. He didn't like what Zach Bolduc of the Blues did. He gave it back to him. He took a cross-check from him. He went back at him. I think you're going to see a lot more of that and more from his peers than maybe the older players. I think you're going to see that competitiveness come out in him and the other players that won't shy away from getting in the face of 98. Because let's face it, if you're going to circle one player on the Blackhawks and stop them from winning, you're going to circle 98. And that's just the fact. So I think he's going to get bumped a lot more this year than he did last year.
Yeah, he's already one of the faces of the league, and I think in large part because of the hype coming in, but also the market. Chicago and what it represented for a long time, and he's playing tonight. He played opening night last year, I believe it was, against Sid in Pitt, which was incredible. Yeah. And yet he's a teenager still. He's still one of the 7 or 8 youngest players in the league, Panger, as you know. I think it's asking so much of him. And being around him, like you said, everything about the interviews and him handling all that kind of stuff. What about behind the scenes? Because generally the way it works, in the NHL is you get a player that status who represents what he represents. That captaincy, they're just waiting to throw it on him. And I know Nick Foligno's got it. But is it a scenario where you see that as a formality in 2 or 3 years? And, undoubtedly this guy is going to morph into just a superstar that represents the franchise, but moreover the league, and maybe plays for Canada at the Olympics in 26. How big can this get and how quickly can it get to that point for Connor Bedard?
Well, number one, I'll go to the first part of it because it was imperative that Nick Foligno, who, by the way, a lot of games on the road, Nick Foligno played the left wing because they wanted to make sure they didn't put themselves in a bad spot and Connor get pushed around, and Nick did that. At home, they had a little bit of change, and he played mostly with Kurashev and anybody else on the left wing. So number one, I think he really learned a lot last year from the locker room, from how to handle the other parts of the game. You're not gonna put Nick Foligno's personality or voice, right into Connor Bedard. But I have noticed a difference already this year, in just the way that he speaks, the way that he's not opening up a lot, but he's a very engaging guy when you get one-on-one with him and you want to talk hockey. He wants to talk about the players that you're playing against. If you ask him a question about a defenseman that he played with in the Western Hockey League, he'll say, well, what do you want to know? He'll follow it up. Well, what do you need to know? Well, I'm wondering if he's good on the D. No, I'll tell you. And he's got a great brain for everything. So he's really good that way. Now, fast forward it, because this year he's sitting there with way more guys with experience, with whether it be Brody or Martinez or Craig Smith or Pat Maroon or Tara Vinen. So he's got and Bertuzzi. He's got more guys that he can lean on a little bit. And I think they're taking over the room more. But also, he sits right beside Nick Foligno in the home locker room, and he sits right beside Kurashev. That'll continue all year long, so that Nick Foligno, when he sees the young players kind of wandering around, he kind of grabs them back in. Everybody in here. We're going to talk hockey. We're going to hot stove, and we're all going to be together here. So I think you're going to see a big change in that part of it, and that might lead for, maybe things that he says has a little bit more weight to them, and he'll get more confident speaking about the team and what he's got to do better, what the team's got to do better, instead of just giving the answers that he, an 18 or 19-year-old will give. So the other part is, I think that, yes, after Nick Foligno's career or playing time with the Blackhawks is done, yes, I think it's going to be a natural just handoff to Connor Bedard, whether it's the 2 years that Nick's got left in the deal or a year after that, if Nick signs another 1-year deal after that. But I do see that it would go right into the hands, much like it did with Sidney, Connor, Yzerman, Sakic. You go down the list. I mean, they're not all ready right away, and they make, they don't exactly maybe say the right things at the right time. But in time, they've all ended up being unbelievable captains.
With Darren Pang, Craig Berube well, and up here in Toronto, there's a lot of buzz about what he can bring because the core players are back for the most part. There's turnover elsewhere in the lineup. But in terms of, main pieces and people that are going to represent the team and talk every day, Craig Berube is more or less representing the biggest change. How big of an effect and positive effect do you think he'll have on this Maple Leaf team?
I think he'll have an effect. But again, it's going to be about the players changing their game as well and changing the way that they play and having that commitment to be dedicated to defending first, and then the offensive side of the puck will take care of it. I love dealing with Chief, you guys. I mean, if O-Dog came to me in the morning and was like, hey, I played 9 minutes last night, I'm 9 minutes. And then he went up to the coach Berube and said, Coach, I played 9 minutes. I'm looking at the sheet. I played 9 minutes. I don't know how many times Chief just looked at the player or looked at me or looked at everybody around and says, well, just play better. You play better. You play more. It's very simple. Play.
Yeah.
And I'll
like
say,
that.
well, hey, how do you want me to handle that conversation? And he goes, just like you said it. He played 9 minutes because he didn't play very well. So I told him in the room that if you play that way, you play 9 minutes or you won't play at all. So, play better and you might get into 13 and 14. Play better than that, you might get into 15 and 16. That's going to be the bottom line. Will it be more difficult in Toronto? I think it might be more difficult in Toronto. Will he get worn out from the media and
the media,
the questions, the constant scrutiny, the constant overanalyzing, the constant opinions? Mm-hmm. I do believe that Chief has a way of kind of blocking that stuff out pretty darn good and just staying true to himself and to the guys that are in the locker room. He'll always have their back. He's not going to throw them under the bus on a public stage. If he does that, he's already thrown them under the bus in his locker room with his teammates. To be quite fair with you guys, that's the way he deals with things from what I experienced anyway on the outside in St. Louis those years.
How visible is he, inside the room? And like you said, like a lot of coaches sometimes, and what I mean by that, a lot of coaches, like, they separate themselves from the dressing room. They allow the leadership core to handle it. They go in, they say their piece, and then they don't really have a relationship with the guys other than going and having a chat with them here or there. Is Craig a guy that's on the plane going back and talking to guys, having one-on-ones? Like, how is his interaction with the group that you witnessed, kind of from behind the scenes?
Well, the best interaction that I saw him in St. Louis was on the plane back from Game 7 in Boston. He interacted a lot.
Yeah.
With a bunch of beers, I would imagine.
with a bunch of beers in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But I think he's a very, I think everybody would like to play for him because I think he's a stand-up guy. I think he when he has his meetings, he has his meetings. And when he has to say something to a player standing on the ice and that player's struggling, sometimes you might assume you're staying there, you're watching practice, you're like, oh, man, Chiefs with Mitch Marner. Man, they've been at it for this 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Man, they're probably really going at it. But all likelihood is he feels when a player is down and he can pump them up. He's got that ability and he knows when he can get more from a player. He knows they're confident, so he can knock them down because they've got the confidence to be able to handle that. So, I think he's good like that, and I think the players will find that. And at the bottom line is, if the players feel like he's got their back, then they're going to perform. They do. They perform harder for the coach if you know that coach behind everybody's back is not jabbing in the back and, you know what I mean, being a cynical guy and criticizing all the time. So
Absolutely.
I think he's very, very good at that. Yeah.
Well, the NHL season off and running. You'll be a busy man for the next 8 or 9 months, Panger, but we always appreciate you finding time for us. Thank you for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Oh, Doug, I should be golfing right now, but it's 98 degrees in Vegas. I got the TNT game tomorrow night. I mean, it is hot out there, even for this little fella.
Yeah, and you also, I heard you got to pull out $1,200 cash to play golf somewhere down there too. I heard it's insane to play golf in Vegas.
Oh, dog, with the cash you make, are you kidding me? This is
exactly. Boom, boom, boom. Shadow Creek's calling your name. Go say hi to the boys at Shadow Creek for the O-Dog. Thanks, Panger.
See you, boys. Take care. Have a good
Darren
year.
Pang. You got it from the NHL on TNT.
Is it that expensive?
My buddy was just on a golf trip. He's like, we play golf, like just guys trying to have a nice time, no goofy stuff. Get to the golf court, $1,000 US. Like, I played Pebble Beach and it was $500 US, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it for Pebble. Mm-hmm. I'm not paying that at Wynn Golf in Vegas. That's obscene.
I'm pretty sure Shadow Creek is the most expensive course in the United States.
Does it come with like bottle service or something?
I'm sure it comes.
No, it's not. It's golf. You might get a sandwich at the turn if you're lucky, but I highly doubt it. Doogie, dig into some golf pricing in Vegas, please.
I feel like you pay $1,200. There's at the ninth hole. There's some form of a entertainment or like there's a club you go in for shots or something.
No, you're not
like
getting a lap
DJ
dance and a cold beer after 9. Like you that's for golf.
Yeah.
$1,200 to golf. I would never. I mean,
crazy?
I don't golf anyways, but I would never do that.
It's
ever.
crazy. Now it's a phenomenal course. It is a phenomenal looking course.
Yeah,
and it's weird because what I've heard, through the grapevine, I've never played it, is it's owned by one of the casinos. I think MGM owns it.
Yeah.
So it's technically public, like you can play it, but it's also one of those kind of things where you might have to be staying somewhere. You might have to be a high roller. Like I'm sure they comp a lot of rounds there. Like I'm sure if you dump $100,000 into the casino,
I played it 3 days
Shadow
in a
Creek.
row. I played it 3 days in a row with Tom Barrasso, and I had to pick him up in a limo every day. Guess where I picked him up?
At the casino.
MGM.
Yeah, exactly. So there it is. That means he was probably rolling, and they're like, hey, dump some money into the
They were like, go play golf,
Go
man.
play Shadow Creek. Because that's what they'll do. They'll send you out in limos and everything. Everything's comped if you're dumping money into the place. But I'm pretty sure Shadow Creek is number 1. I think Sawgrass is number 2 now. The stadium course in Arizona is pretty high. Pebble's high. There's a number of courses. It just costs a lot of money.
But like you said, some of those
places.
kind of signature courses, stadium courses,
Yeah.
I'll do it. But like for some hotel course in Vegas,
that's the thing.
Dude.
Like if you're playing Kiowa or something, okay, that's a course you want to play. Kiowa Island, you want to play. You want to play Sawgrass. You want to play Pebble. Yeah,
right.
I hear you. You say you're playing.
I can't. I find it difficult to get over the hurdle. 500 was kind of like, okay, it's not going to get any worse than this.
Right.
$1,000 to play a round of golf.
Right. Maybe
just
more than
seems-
1,200 American.
That seems a little bit rich, man.
A little bit rich.
Very rich.
A little bit rich. All right, Al's Brothers Clue yesterday had a lot of people buzzing. Right, we're giving away tickets to the home opener Saturday night. Leafs Penguins, and every day this week, Al's brother is going to give you a different clue as to where he is in the city, because we've sent Al's brother out somewhere in the city with a pair of Leaf tickets, and you have to guess where he's hiding for your chance to win them. All right, you want to hear the second clue of the week from
Let's
Al's
go.
brother in terms of his whereabouts. Let's hear it.
Hey, Leaf fans, we're still trying to give away those Maple Leafs tickets to the home opener this upcoming weekend. Yesterday's clue, little vague. Did that purposely. But here's another hint to try and track me down. This place was the home of the fictional team, the Hamilton Mustangs.
Interesting. The fictional team, the Hamilton Mustangs. I still have no idea where Al's brother is. But tune in tomorrow for another clue, and the first caller through on Friday. You do not have to find him in his location. You just have to know where the location is, and the first one in on Friday with the correct answer will pick up a pair of Leaf tickets to the home opener. Leafs Pens, Sidney Crosby, Saturday night. Does not get any better than that, and Al's brother is hoping that you get those tickets. Full details at tsn1050.ca. All right, Robert Saleh is out in New York.
Crazy.
He's out. See you later. And by all accounts, security got him out of there. Like, that seems a
walked
little
him out
bit.
the door? Like
he didn't get to address the team or anything. They just said,
dude,
pass
that's what
guard
happens
here.
when you get fired in pro sports. It's like anything else. You're not going anywhere. Security's going to escort you to your desk, grab your stuff, and put it in a box, and you're gone. That's how it goes down, man.
I guess that's the way it goes down with every other profession, too, right? Like, why would it be different? But sometimes the coach is allowed to address the team and whatever. But it sounds like the ambassador down there said no dice. So Robert Saleh, man, you better have some big security, man. That guy is jacked.
So you're telling me he tried to address the team and Johnson said no?
I don't know that. What I'm saying is that has happened before from coaches who are leaving or getting fired. And a lot of times owners will say, yes, you can go and talk to the team before you leave.
No.
And say, thanks for everything, blah, blah, blah. He was not granted that opportunity.
But he might have been like, you know what, to hell with these guys.
True.
You know, like, because he might have got a win that Rodgers threw him under the bus or somebody else, and he was like, to hell with these guys. I'm out the door. Or security might have just said, here's a box, throw your stuff in and get the hell out of here. Or give us your pass. Like, you know, nowadays HR has to be involved. Like, there's a lot of like red tape that has to go through it. It's not just the owner, you know, sending a stooge down to fire him. Like, it's a big business. Like, they'd have to pay him. What does he have
he's
left
getting
on his
paid a
deal?
lot of money. I think he's got a year or two left on the deal, and he'll get back in as a coordinator somewhere. But he's not coaching again. Like, that's not happening. Dan Graziano on that and more. Best bets still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. You've got a hockey game currently ongoing. St. Louis now up 3-2.
Yeah, they've stormed back three in a row.
Wow, what a game. Philip Broberg got himself a goal.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway got an assist on that.
I guarantee you guys by Monday, you know what? Might be earlier because Buffalo's in not a comfortable spot already. We'll be talking about someone's house on fire in the NHL by Monday.
Yeah.
You think so? Monday's your day?
Is it the following Monday after that? Is it, I don't know, is it 10 days in? Somebody's house will be on fire in 10 days.
Well, there's always overreaction, whatever. The first 5 games, whatever. Like, team gets blown out, you're like, that team's done. You're like, you know what I mean?
I know, but like, Noodles, don't you remember being inside the law? I remember a training camp where we didn't win a game, and it was one training camp game left, talking to the trainers and just saying, like, we've got to win this one, man. Our guys are going to be pissed, and everyone was miserable. Like, just misery sets in, I found, so quickly. Quickly.
But there's
like
so
everybody,
much...
like, everybody thinks the league is so joyous and you make so much money. I found misery to come. I mean, we weren't like world beater teams in Carolina, but man, did it set in quick.
Well, there's so much more attention to it. You know, like you could, like as players, you were sitting there, like, you know, 20 years ago, you're sitting there and, you know, the local news will talk about it. Now there's so much more information.
Yeah, you're right.
And betting is involved. And it's such a bigger entity. It feels like the pressure mounts, even though you're in, you know, the first week of the season or the second week of the season. There will be an organization where the house is on fire, but they'll be able to right the ship. But at that particular moment, the house will be on fire.
It feels like it's over at that point. And yeah, it's a great point about social media. You can't run from it.
Right.
You know, back before phones and the internet and stuff, you could disappear, go to the movies. Who cares? Yeah. Everyone's going to leave you alone. Now you're on your phone constantly, and people are texting you. How many guys are getting texts being like, "Hey, what's going on with you guys? You guys stink," and that's your like dad texting you that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, big news out of New York today. We called it yesterday. You said it, like there is a volcano that is about to erupt with the Jets. You can feel it. And Saleh is out. The head coach is out, and everyone's buzzing on why it happened, who was involved in the decision. To chat about it, we're joined now by ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano. Dan, you've been covering the NFL for a long time. You know, where does this rank for you on the shock meter that Saleh got let go today?
I mean, in general, I don't think you can be overly shocked just if you look at, like, the job he's did and the record and the expectations. But, you know, I think it's See, like, I don't think I would have been shocked if they let him go in January, right? Like after last year. But to bring him back and then only give him 5 games, that I think feels a little bit knee-jerk and irrational on the part of the owner, because they're all in to win this year around Aaron Rodgers, and really what Woody Johnson, the owner, is saying right now is, I think this roster is good enough to compete and win a championship. I don't think it's well coached enough, so we need to make a switch now before it's too late. And so I think I don't think anybody saw it coming. Talking to people in the Jets building, I don't think anybody there saw it coming. So yeah, it's fairly shocking. Again, not shocking that they would want a different head coach based on how he's performed, but shocking that they do it now, this early in the season.
Who do you think, if anyone, did the owner consult on this? I don't think Aaron Rodgers would have been. Maybe he was. Tell me who the owner possibly consulted on this decision.
The owner says that he did not consult Aaron Rodgers on it, that he spoke with him Monday night, but it was about, how the season was going. And,
do you believe that?
Congratulating him on getting to 60,000 passing yards and all that kind of stuff. I do, because I think, like, if Woody Johnson goes in and tells Aaron Rodgers on Monday night that he's going to fire Robert Saleh on Tuesday morning, A, that's crummy business, right? They haven't even told the guy yet. You're telling other people. And B, it probably would have got out, right? Like, we didn't get this news until Saleh got fired. It's not like Rodgers is like, Mr. keeps his mouth shut all the time. So, yeah, I believe it. I think this is an ownership decision. I've made enough calls and texts on this today and talked to enough people I trust that I think Rodgers and Saleh had a fine relationship, and it was not one that was going to lead to Rodgers wanting him out. I think the effect Rodgers had is indirect, because, like, right now, if you look at the Jets, the problem's on the offense, but they're not going to fire the offensive coordinator because that's Rodgers' guy. Nathaniel Hackett is his favorite coach. The reason Nathaniel Hackett is there is because they thought, they knew he would work well with Rodgers, their past experience together in Green Bay. So if the owner, you're like, well, I got to fire somebody, and you can't fire the offensive coordinator because it's going to take off your quarterback, then maybe that's, what ends up happening as a result. So I think if Rodgers had an effect here, it was that kind of indirect effect, not a go to the owner and say, I want this guy gone kind of effect.
Yeah, like not a conspiracy theory, but the part of me wonders if that conversation, the owner picked up on something, though. Like, it wasn't a direct, you got to get rid of Saleh.
Yeah,
but if he's talking, if Rodgers is like, man, we're a mess.
Well,
like, you see that practice last week? Holy.
Yeah. Right. So, like, nobody loves a good conspiracy theory better than Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting bit of phrasing that you used there. But I think if you're a responsible NFL team owner thinking about making a change, you do try and get the pulse, right? Like, here's what I'm seeing. I feel like there's too many penalties. I feel like some of his in-game decisions aren't very good. What's he like behind the scenes? And you probably talk to other coaches and key players just in general, like, to get a feel for it. Not a, hey, do you think we should make a move on this guy kind of thing, right? So, yeah, maybe. But, obviously it's not going well. They lost 10-9 at home to the Denver Broncos 2 weeks ago. My understanding is last week was pretty miserable around that place after that loss. And then they go to London, where, by the way, Woody Johnson spent 4 years as U.S. ambassador when Donald Trump was president. Like, he's got some high-level friends in London. And I'm sure he was a little bit embarrassed about them getting smoked by the Vikings and Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 interceptions. So maybe that triggered something too. These billionaire owners are tough to predict how they'll act sometimes, and I think that today is an example of that.
That's true, man. Americans, they don't like getting chirped by the Brits, right? Like, there's a chance Woody didn't take that lightly, man. But
no way, man. We fought a war for that.
That's right, exactly. Come on now, with Dan Graziano.
Declared independence and whatnot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of the replacement here, Saleh not being the guy, and the defensive coordinator getting promoted to head coach, how does that help the offensive line? Aaron Rodgers, who has struggled. Like, how does this? What changes for Monday night against the Bills?
Really good question. So, I think so. The defensive coordinator becomes the head coach. He's never been a head coach before. So, what's he going to do? Is he going to go in the offensive meeting room and say, "Here's the changes we need to make"? If he does, they'll have to do it. He's now the head coach. But, is he qualified to do that? Does he feel qualified to do that? So good question. Now, is it a wake-up call, right? Like, does Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, do those guys get together and say, all right, we've got to do something different. Like, we cannot keep banging our head against the same wall. It's not working. People are starting to get fired, right? Then maybe it has an effect. But you're absolutely right. If there's no sense of accountability on the offensive side, if these guys know they can't get fired, right, then what is their incentive to change other than, professional pride and desire to win? But if you have stubborn people who think their way is the right way and it'll prove out over time, then I wouldn't expect much to change at all.
With Dan Graziano, ESPN. So the Chiefs are 5-0, and just going about their business.
Big shock.
Yeah, it's amazing. They've won 2 Super Bowls in a row. They come out this year in just a routine 5-0. They've had injury issues, all that kind of stuff. They're not blowing the doors off teams, but they're just doing exactly what they have to win. How terrifying is this for the rest of the league that they are in the position they're currently in, considering who they are and what their history is and what we know they're capable of doing come playoff time?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Any of these teams that are winning games, right, while not playing their best, are dangerous teams, right? The Detroit Lions haven't looked great, but they're 3-1. The Houston Texans haven't looked great, but they're 4-1. These are teams that we think by the end of the year are going to be really good, and they're banking wins that will only help them in terms of playoff seeding and everything. So yeah, if you're looking at the Chiefs at 5-0 and they haven't played well, they're still in line to get the 1 seed and a first-round bye, and they're even last year they didn't even get the home playoff games and they still beat everybody. So look, they're the bully. They're the beasts of the league right now. Everybody knows that's the team you have to knock off. If they don't look good, no one's going to buy it. Everybody knows that the coach and the quarterback are football geniuses that are going to figure something out no matter what. And can they lose in the playoffs? Of course. We have seen that. But right now, the role they're on and trying to go for an unprecedented third straight Super Bowl, they are a team that everybody's got problems. The Chiefs are the best at fixing theirs as the season goes along. And that is absolutely terrifying if you're one of the teams trying to catch them.
Dan, just before we get you out of here, I just saw that the Pats are going to put Drake Maye in. Like, how dangerous of a game is that? Yeah. They're a bit of they're a massive mess offensively. And we've seen in the past couple of years, these young quarterbacks, a lot of them just get swallowed up. How dangerous of a game is that?
Yeah, so they didn't want to do it, but I do think they expected Jacoby Brissett to play better as the starter than he has in the meantime. And you get to a point where you're like, well, we have to coach the rest of this roster too. And these guys are looking around saying, this other guy's a lot better in practice. Like maybe we might have a chance to win these games if you put him in. So you're riding that fine line. Now, when you're trying to break in a young quarterback, the coaches I've talked to over the years that have gone through this, they say similar things. And the overriding sentiment is you don't want the young player to have negative experiences pile up and compound to the point where they are detrimental to his development. And so that's what the Patriots coaches want to watch for now that he's the starter. If that starts to happen, you may have to change course again. But I think if you're the Patriots right now, you're thinking that maybe switching to Drake Maye, who looked more than capable in the preseason, by the way, and can do a lot more on the field in terms of his arm and his legs than Jacoby Brissett can do, maybe there's a positive, maybe there's a benefit, maybe the team will get sparked and the experience he'll have being a starter will actually be more positive than negative. Maybe he'll build some confidence, maybe even have a little success. So I think that's the hope right now, is that making the switch, maybe the mood perks up, maybe they play a little better, maybe they have a chance to put a win or two on the board, and even the inevitable struggles that a rookie quarterback's going to have, an inexperienced young one like him, might be mitigated by, the fun you have in the meantime with the whatever small successes you're able to have. They're in a tough spot. Their team is not in shape to break in a rookie quarterback, but you take a guy third in the draft, you think he has special characteristics, and if he does, then maybe he's got what it takes to overcome the circumstances a little bit.
Yeah, and the draft is a long way away, and the end of the season and the standings a long way away. But I saw people tweeting about it today. Like, currently the Pats would have, I guess, the first overall pick, which shocks me that Carolina wouldn't have that. But they would, and they just took Drake Maye, so I guess they'll stick with him. Bengals would be 2. They're not taking a quarterback. Jags 3 is interesting. I don't think they would, but I don't know.
Sign their guy.
Yeah, exactly. They just
Trevor
locked
Lawrence
in
has
Lawrence.
guaranteed money in 2027. Like, they're not doing anything. That's the best thing to be, is a team with a top draft pick and that doesn't need a quarterback, because you can trade that pick to somebody who does and get a lot, as the as the Bears showed us.
The question is, what if the Browns have that first pick? What do the Cleveland Browns do, in your opinion, Dan Graziano?
I mean, you guys, how long is your show? The Browns situation is a mess, because Deshaun Watson's money is fully guaranteed, $46 million each of the next 2 years after this one. So unless the league, if the league suspends him again, which they could, depending what they find out about this latest lawsuit that was just settled, then the Browns can void the guarantees. Like, they might be, if you're the Browns, you might be sort of secretly hoping the league does you a favor there. But, look, I think at some point you run into a sunk cost situation, and I think that's what Browns ownership is going to have to figure out if this guy doesn't start to play better. He hasn't been mediocre. He's been flat out bad. So I don't know what they're going to do. They're sticking with him probably longer than anybody else would have, given the contract situation. But whatever the solution is, it's going to be a painful one.
No kidding, man. No kidding. Great catching up with you, Dan. We really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Dan Graziano, ESPN.
Not even just looking bad, Deshaun Watson. Just the optics. Like, you know how some guys look bad and they almost have this look where it's like, don't look at me. I don't care about this. Mm-hmm. Like, he's coming off as that. And I know the thing was explained with the too many men and it wasn't his deal, but just that whole operation is a circus.
It's awful. His body language is awful. He looks, it doesn't look like, and this is probably unfair. It is unfair from the outside, but it doesn't look like he's got a connection with teammates or anything. Like, it just looks like he's there to make, get paid, do his time in Cleveland and leave,
Yeah. And you would think after what he went through with that off-field stuff, we'll call it, that he would be so motivated to be like a dominant football player to make that go away.
Well, big time. Because the organization was banking on him, to turn things around, and then they can go, see, we invested in him. He's a changed man, all of that. Now he's a disaster. They want to get rid of this guy. So he's not only a disaster on the field, he's been a disaster off the field. That magnifies it, because as you mentioned yesterday, Hayes, the fans, there's a lot of the fan base that were pissed that they signed him because of his off-field antics. And now you bring it on.
But they were willing to put that aside, Noodles, if he was dynamite.
And he's not. And if I'm the owner, I'm active. I'm calling Goodell by the hour saying, you got to get me out of this.
Yes.
Like, you got to suspend him, or so. You got to do something that I can void the contract on.
Yeah.
You have to get me out of here. Have to. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come. We'll tee up Panthers, Bruins tonight. We've got Chicago and Utah tonight and a couple of ball games. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Looking at the Utah Hockey Club tonight. That's their name, Hockey Club.
Yep.
It's scrolling below us on TSN. Blackhawks versus Hockey Club tonight. And I like the Hockey Club. I like the Hockey Club to get a win tonight at home. That building will be rocking. And Logan Cooley, 3+ shots on goal. Sneaky little parlay. He's a really good young player. I think he's going to have a big year. Paying plus 291 that parlay tonight. Today's Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Live same game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly.
And live.
19 plus, physically located in Ontario. Probably should have given that one a read through before the first time I read it.
You before you read that, you were like, I am a veteran broadcaster and this will be a breeze.
Yes. But it's a sneaky word, live and live. It's the same word, but it's all about the context and,
There was some tough stuff in there that just reached out and grabbed you.
Yeah, it did.
I
thought it was gonna be like live every game through FanDuel, but it was live same game parlays are now available.
Listen, you've had a good show.
You've
had a really strong show.
Thank you.
You had
I
a guy
that.
say great question twice.
That's a new record on this program.
Double down.
No one's ever doubled down on a great question. And that has to put me in the lead. I mean, I got to be leading you two now. Season-long race towards the great
We'll give
Good
you the
Question
lead if
Cup.
that's something. The Good Question Cup. You're in the lead, man.
I'm currently leading the Good Question Cup. And Korpisalo will start for the Bruins tonight.
There you go.
There it
Makes
is.
sense.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Swayman, popcorn, watching the champs play.
Baseball
That'll be a good
cap.
game. Florida-Boston tonight. And Mets-Phillies in New York. Can't wait for that game. And then Padres-Dodgers. We'll see. Dave Roberts can get through it. Very unsettling seeing Manny Machado throw a ball at him. Very unsettling stuff.
So upsetting.
Rolled up.
So upsetting.
So upsetting. We'll see if he can keep his emotions in check for that game tonight. So a lot to break down tomorrow, including a big tee-up, Leafs-Habs opening night tomorrow night. So full breakdown of tonight's activities and a full tee-up tomorrow. We can't wait for it. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today, TV, radio, podcast, web, YouTube as well. Find everything on YouTube for us. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
Shesterkin. Au revoir. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.